Hi, my name is Holt Lancaster, and for my final project for SPED-450 is a video essay. I wanted to do a video response because it is very similar to many of the assignments that I've been given throughout this course, which is to make video responses to essays or videos or various other media we have been given throughout the course, and to respond to others with more video responses. Sadly, I will not be able to respond to anyone else's video because, as far as I'm aware, I am the only one doing a video essay for a final project. But I wanted to pay homage to that format, especially because I have never had another class that has had that kind of assignment. And I, in a sense, wanted to honor it. Because it was very fascinating. It was very interesting. And it felt more casual, free, than having to write an essay or having to do various other things that felt more restricting. And so I wanted to do that for my final project as well. I have with me a note card full of talking points in case I forget anything. Hopefully I won't, but I'll be occasionally looking at that. At the start of this course, we went over a lot of the history behind people with disabilities. Starting generally, we watched a video called Crip Camp, which went over a lot of the specifics of how people with disabilities had to fight for their right to really exist in, if I remember correctly, the mid to late 1970s, which was on the later end of a lot of the civil rights movement. And I remember a lot of the people in that documentary were talking about how it felt like they had gotten left behind in the wake of the various protests for rights. And so this was sort of later than the rest of them. But in the end, they were able to secure the federal act. I can't remember what specific legal lingo was used, but the 504, which gave rights to people with disabilities, such as adjusting infrastructure to accommodate people in wheelchairs. Was many of the people in the documentary were people in wheelchairs, so that was very important for them to be able to get around, instead of having to, deal with stairs in a wheelchair. We also learned about the laws specifically about protecting education for people with disabilities. The IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and how it, in a way, is more restrictive than the 504. 504 generally protects still people with disabilities. And as far as I'm aware, it doesn't claim to define people with disabilities. But the IDEA has a list of 13 disabilities with which people can fall under for the IDEA to apply to them. The end goal of this IDEA is to give students an IEP. There are lots of these kinds of terminology. It, to be honest, a little hard to remember, but I'm sure I'll get it with time. The IEP is stands for Individualized Education Program, which is which does a lot. It is like it's a list of goals for students and teachers to achieve sort of together to provide the necessary education and create this path for students to be able to learn and in a way that's best for them, individualized. The process for a student to get an IEP is decently long, which it should be. It shouldn't be a sort of quick decision. It should have lots of people involved. Was a big one that the texts we were given sort of emphasized, is that there's a lot of checks and balances, shall we say, to make sure that these students are getting the best education possible and the best IEP possible to provide them the best education. Included in this list of people, a big part of this list are the parents or guardians of this student. A lot of communication is necessary with them. There are, for a student to sort of apply to the IDEA to get an IEP, they need to fall under one of the 13 categories of disabilities. We went over a few specific ones in class. I don't think we went over all of them in depth. There really isn't enough time. But such disabilities include a specific learning disability, a autism spectrum disorder, deaf blindness, being deaf or hearing impaired. There are lots of categories, including multiple disabilities, in case you fall under many. But you only apply if you fit under those categories, which is sort of how that differs from the 504. At the end of the course, there were two very interesting videos that we went over, which was Unforgotten and Including Sam. Unforgotten was a video that I think was meant really to reinforce the idea that the issues that people had faced in that very first video that we watched it in Crip Camp is not is not old. It may have happened a while ago, but many people that were in the sorts of concentration camps that were described and shown in Unforgotten may not exist today, but they're not out of the common conscious. These people are very much still alive today, and they're not, old. These are young people that have experienced these horrors, which is important to remember, that this wasn't something happening hundreds of years ago or something like that. This was something very recent. Now, a very different video, but still very important, was Including Sam, which was talking a lot about inclusion, as the name would imply. And it went over something that had been discussed again throughout the course, which was the sort of hierarchy of needs, the pyramid that starts with public education, of staying in public schools with all of your other peers and all that sort of thing. And then as you go up the pyramid, it starts getting more restricted until, like, at the very top, you are in, like this homeschooled situation with little interaction with other peers. And Including Sam was very good in showing why one would need to move up that pyramid. It was discussing a lot how full inclusion in these public schools is an ideal. And a lot of the time it does work, especially in lower levels of education, in sort of like pre-K, elementary school. Inclusion works, or at least it can, depending on students and their needs. But they express that it is much more difficult for full inclusion to be viable in higher levels of education, even in middle school or high school. Full inclusion in with students taking the same classes as their peers and experiencing the same kinds of education is tough for everyone involved, for teachers' aides, the students with disabilities. It can be tough on everyone, which is why one may need to move to these more restrictive environments to provide more focused attention and education. There was a point made about specifically a student who had, if I remember correctly, schizophrenia, who was very unhappy in these public schools with inclusion. And only whenever they moved to a more restrictive environment did they feel more healthy and generally better. And so it's that video definitely made clear that just because a student has an IEP and it has inclusion in the school system and it's working right now, doesn't mean that you should rest on your laurels and expect that should remain the same. It certainly can change, and it is up to teachers to keep an eye on it, keep an eye on the situation, and really make sure that these students are always getting the education that they need. So a big takeaway that I had in this course, and it was an idea that I expressed, I think, a few times throughout the discussions, either on the discussion boards or on the video responses, is that people like to be treated like people, which I think shouldn't come as a surprise. But that means that as a teacher, I will need to really treat all of my students with care and respect and give them the attention that they deserve, regardless of their situation, whether they have a disability or not. And that I will need to be attentive, and if not assume that just because I sort of figured out the class dynamic in the first month doesn't mean that it will stay the same the next month or later on. If I have that student in a year from now, I will need to be on the ball, so to speak, and really make sure that these students, disabilities or no, are getting the attention that they and the education that they deserve as human beings. Thank you.